Hi everyone, my name's Glyn. I work for World Development Movement, and so I was just going to do a little bit of a presentation, I guess, about a couple of things that I've worked on at WDM and also taken over from my predecessor Pontus Westerberg, who I think probably lots of you might have met at previous ECF events. First of all, on reactivating supporters and also segmenting our email list to kind of try and tailor our email communications as best as possible to individuals based on their previous behaviour and what they've done with WDM, really. So it's kind of it's very much a work in progress and an early bit of a pilot stage project, really. So I'm really keen to get people's thoughts and ideas and on what I can do to improve, we can do to improve this, because this is, as I say, it's this really kind of a trial project as much as anything to see how it works. But so I guess kick off by talking a little bit about email reactivation. So the first question that was looked at was who should be sent those emails. You know, which of our supporters who are not opening emails, for example, should we contact and try and engage first of all. So what was done was we emailed the people who hadn't opened, or in our system we're using MailChimp to send out emails, which were the people who hadn't been registered as having opened an email for at least 6 months. And so in that period, they would have probably had an email maybe every 10 days over that 6-month period. So that's quite a reasonable number of emails that in our system were registered as not having opened at all, basically.
And how long could they have been on the list? Could it be 10 years?
I don't know. Maybe 5, 6 years, probably. Maybe more than that. I don't. No, the list had never previously been cleaned. Never previously been cleaned. And one thing I'll mention at the end is, so this is one of the ongoing debates, obviously, that people have around email reactivation, is do you delete people who don't become reactivated through the program from your email list at the end of it? We did, but that was controversial, and others don't agree with that. But that's what we did. So what happened with the process was that an email initially was sent out to this selection of supporters who hadn't opened a single email for 6 months. I don't remember the exact number of people it was, but it was probably in the region of 4,000 to 5,000 emails in this case that were sent out. And the subject line of the email was, "Have we offended you?" Now I know that got some debate on the ECF email list about a year or so ago. You know, hello Glyn, hello supporter. It looks like you're not opening our emails. We'd love to hear why. We want to send you emails that are relevant to you, and we certainly don't want to spam anyone. Please click on the link below that most represents how you feel about our email list. So it's kind of a bit of a survey about what people thought about our email communications. So the first option was...
So what was the email about? Like the list, what was it about?
What do you mean?
The general list. What is it? Why you contact them? For what?
For what? For campaigning and fundraising. For WDM,
okay,
yeah. So the first option they had in this kind of survey, if you like, was I do read your emails, actually. And the second was I don't know who you are and why you are emailing me. The third one was I don't have time to read your emails at the moment. The fourth one was I don't receive emails from you that interest me. And the next one was I can't read your emails properly. I think that could have been worded slightly differently, actually, because that might mean I can't read your emails properly, as in, you know, I'm partially sighted or something, or it might mean they're the incorrect format or something. So props could have been broken down into two separate options. The next one was I don't normally read emails from organisations, which begs the question why you're on an organisational email list. And the last one was you send me too many emails. Oh, in fact, no, there's one more. You don't send me enough emails. Which and I've got the stats in a second for what people responded to. So I'll open those up in a second. Oh yeah, and something else, which we got these linked through to a page on our blog where people could put comments as well. Now, unfortunately, I don't have that. It disappeared when Pontus left, unfortunately, so I wasn't able to see all of the comments, but I know there were a large number of comments. It did engage a lot of people to kind of respond to this. In terms of the exact numbers, so Oh, this is the story. This is the rest of the email. If you want to stay on the list, you don't need to do anything. But if you want to unsubscribe, we totally understand. All you have to do is click this link. Thanks for your support. So that was the email that went to about 5,000 or 6,000 people. Now we had an open rate of about 17%, which at the time was higher than the list as a whole. We've actually increased our sort of typical open rate that we're getting at the moment to a little bit more than that now, but that was higher than that. And the click-through rate was 11%.
The open rate is about the subject, did we offend you? Is this?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
You didn't do an A/B test?
We didn't, there's no A/B test of this at all, actually. It was just one subject that went out. This was kind of, I think it was suggested by someone on the ECF list, actually, that was might have been Rachel, actually, that was a good subject line to try for this.
Yeah.
But the click-through rate was pretty high. It was 11%, and 2.8% people unsubscribed straight away, which is maybe not that surprising. And there were some complaints. The complaints were about, first of all, how did you know? So people were a bit concerned, and we had a few comments either by email or left on the blog. It's like, are you tracking us? What do you think you're doing? So there's a lack of understanding about how kind of email, tracking of links and things works. Yeah, a lot of people didn't realise it was actually an email list at all that we were sending out as well. They thought we were sending individual personal emails to people.
Over 50 years old, they all think that you're sending them email written by you. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then the other thing which I think you mentioned about sort of false negatives, we actually had a lot of people coming back saying, oh, actually I am opening your emails, I am reading your emails. So there's a few reasons for that. So BlackBerry's, I think, it doesn't always record the fact, certainly in MailChimp, whether an email's been opened, because it's to do with whether images are downloaded, is whether it records the email as having been opened or not. So if someone has set their emails to not download the images, then that won't be recorded. And also, I don't think some mobile phones as well, some other mobile phones as well as BlackBerries, I think don't record that either. So.
Were all of your emails going out in HTML only?
No, they all go out as HTML and plain text.
Because people open them
in plain text, exactly. Yeah, it's not going to record as well. Yeah. So there was quite a lot of people in the end who were actually, reading the emails, but were not,
By quite a lot.
I'll show you the percentage in a second. Well, certainly of the people who responded to the answers, 47% said they weren't reading our emails because they don't have time. 30% said they actually do read our emails, which is interesting. 6% said, "Who are you?" 4% said we send too many emails, and 2% said they don't read emails from organisations. 1% said our emails were boring. Nobody said we were sending. Nobody said they wanted more emails from us. Nobody said they wanted more emails from us at all. People did seem to like the subject line. It did kind of capture people's attention and grab people's. It obviously encouraged people to open the email in the first place, so that was a positive thing. The point about the many false negatives, and people felt the email was a bit abrupt. We've noticed you're not opening our emails is a little bit. Maybe a little bit, a little bit confrontational. So that's again something we've changed in trying this again in the last couple of months. And there was also the question on the ECF list: is if people are saying they don't have time to read emails, does that really mean actually your emails aren't that interesting? Which it might well do. It's a really interesting question as to whether it's a problem having people who aren't engaging at a particular time on your email list, and I don't know what the right answer to that is. Because I'll just run through what we did next, actually, with all of the people who didn't respond to that survey email. So the people who responded to that survey were then considered to have been re-engaged or reactivated by the organisation, and so just stayed on our email list, and that's fine. But then the people who didn't open or weren't recorded as having opened that email were then sent a follow-up email. Yeah, for those who didn't respond, they were sent an email asking if they wanted to renew their subscription to WDM's emails. And they had a yes/no option. It was a simple kind of really short email. Do you want to renew your subscription? Yes, no. And the people who who clicked no or again didn't open that email were then sent another email basically saying, you know, your subscription to WDM emails will expire soon. Please click yes to continue receiving emails. And then a third email was sent. It was basically, this is your last chance to keep receiving emails from WDM. And they also just had a yes link on there. And if people had not responded to any of those emails and clicked yes on any of those emails, they were then wiped from our list. So yeah, so changing the tone of that introduction to the email in particular. So rather than starting from, you know, you haven't been reading our emails, this is outrageous, you haven't been taking action, sort of saying, how can we improve our email communications actually? What can we do better to appeal to you? Was one of the things. So changing the tone of the email. The data to use, so rather than saying people who've not opened an email in the past 6 months, actually we're going to sort of look at the people who haven't clicked on an email in the past 6 months and people who haven't taken a campaign action in that period either. And the reason for doing that is rather using this as primarily as a means of re-engagement of people who aren't taking action, rather than as a means of deleting dead wood from the list on this occasion, partly because I'm still thinking through, frankly, what the best thing to do on that is. But I'm really keen to re-engage the people who aren't taking action at the moment and aren't clicking on links in our emails. So what we'll do with them, what I'm planning to do is do a survey, basically, partly about the email communications at some point, probably not this one because that's the last thing that we did, but also a survey about our campaign action. So for people who haven't taken action on either of our campaigns, we'll ask them, so we've noticed, you know, for example, you've noticed that you haven't taken action on our food speculation campaign in the last 6 months. We'd really like some feedback about the campaign to find out why it hasn't appealed to you, or what could make it more appealing. So really thinking about, you know, getting some feedback from people on the actual campaign specifically that we're working on, and get some ideas and thoughts from people that way to use that as a way of potentially reactivating people. And the other thing that we're looking at doing is changing the unsubscribe process of our emails as well, because at the moment people want to unsubscribe from emails. They're literally, you know, they click unsubscribe, they're taken to a page that says, do you want to unsubscribe, and they're taken off the list. Whereas actually I think I want to give people a series of options there. Actually, I only want to hear about campaigns, I only want to hear about food campaigns, I only want to hear about climate campaigns. So actually people are having a much more, you know, tailored email communications in future towards what they're interested in, rather than a all or none approach, which is basically what we're getting at the moment. So that's kind of what we're looking at doing next week, basically, is that kind of follow on to see if we can kind of re-engage people who haven't been active at all in the last 6 months. So this is something I tried as a bit of a test project to segment our email communications around fundraising appeals. So we send about 4 or 5 fundraising appeals out every year, and those the first sort of process is that an email gets sent out to the whole of our email list initially, and then what we had been doing up until sort of October time last year was then sending an email to all the people who hadn't been recorded in MailChimp as having opened those emails. We sent them a reminder email, basically. So there were people who were getting those reminder emails who'd actually already donated, for example. The data was not kind of sort of matching up in our sort of fundraising database with our email list, and so it's all a bit of a mess. Yeah, let's just run through this. So yeah, email sent to the whole list, and then a reminder sent to the people who didn't open the first email. So what we did this time was send actually a total of 6 emails, I think it was, in the end. Yes, so an email was sent to the whole of the email list, as usual, to tell people about the fundraising appeal. And then there were 5 different reminder emails were sent depending on people's previous activity, donation history or activity with this sort of reminder email. For the reminder emails, if somebody had been a previous donor to WDM, so this all had to be done manually because we're using separate database systems, separate email systems, so this was a ridiculously time-consuming process, and this is why it was a test project to see if it worked. It did work, which is why we're now using engaging networks to do this in future, but that's a different story. So basically the first so for people who had previously donated money to WDM but didn't weren't recorded as having opened the first email about the appeal, the fundraising appeal. They had an email with a completely different subject line, and they had a longer email. We put a couple of extra paragraphs about the appeal and the campaign that we were fundraising for in that email. And then for people who had opened or were recorded in MailChimp, should I say, as having opened the first email but didn't click the link to the donate page, they had a much longer email with a lot more detail, so 5 or 6 additional paragraphs about what the campaign that we were fundraising for was about. And then for people who clicked on the link in the first email but didn't donate, there weren't a huge number of those actually, there was a relatively small number of those, so manually then went through our database and went through and took out the amount that they'd donated as a sort of a mail merge into those emails. And so the first line of those emails that those people got was, "Thanks so-and-so for your previous donation to whatever the appeal was. It was really appreciated," and then went on to talk a little bit more about this specific appeal. So as I say, it was a much more complicated process than it should have been to actually get those emails set up and sent out, due to the fact we didn't have databases that were properly integrated. And then for people who weren't previous donors to WDM, the ones who were recorded as not having opened the first email, we sent them a really, really short email. Really short email, a couple of paragraphs, just focusing on what difference those people could make by donating to our campaign, our appeal. And then the people who were recorded as having opened the first email but not clicked and had never donated before, they didn't get a reminder email, mainly because we couldn't think of what we could write in it that was different, actually, to make it sufficiently different and engaging, and time constraints as much as anything as well. So anyone that has any thoughts on what we could have put in that one, I'd be interested to know. And then last of all, if people had not donated before and clicked on the first email about the action, about the appeal, we then matched that against whether people had taken an action on a similar issue before. And then if people had taken an action on that campaign or a similar issue, we then put a paragraph in the beginning of that email thanking them for having taken part in the campaign and explaining how this fundraising appeal was linked to that to the same issue, to try and kind of get that overlap across. And so the outcome of all of that, which was an awful lot of work, was the fact that it doubled the income for that appeal based on the average for the previous appeals over the course of the past year. So, and that was a 4-figure difference. So that extra work was clearly well worth doing. It made a significant difference to the income from that appeal, basically. So, and that's why we're kind of looking at doing that a lot more in future. So in terms of future plans for what we're thinking of doing, so in future, yeah, if people are getting a fundraising email, we'll always start those emails if they've previously given us a donation with referring back to the previous donation that they gave us, because that definitely had a significant impact. And we're also going to try doing some special update emails, particularly about campaigns every few months, and try and include a paragraph in each of those emails based on the different kind of which actions, for example, those people have taken over the course of the past 6 months, and try and really tailor those communications and emails that people are getting based on what exactly they've done in the past. I know that's kind of probably fairly obvious for some organisations, but it's been a real new thing for us just by not having that data recorded in the right way. And then campaign emails. So people who've taken every action on a campaign, well, they'll get a couple of extra paragraphs, for example. And this is something in emails when we're sending campaign action emails to people. There's always this big debate with campaigners who want to put loads of policy detail in there, and me and the communications team who want to keep them really short and clear and to the point and not have lots of policy detail in there if at all possible. And there's always that little bit of tension. So what we thought would be a good thing to try would be for the people who are clearly most engaged in the campaign and have taken lots of actions, put a bit of extra detail in the emails that go to those people. And then for the people who haven't yet taken action on the campaign, keep those emails really clear and short and to the point, and see if that has a difference. But that way, hopefully, it satisfies the different competing needs in the organisation for how much information we put across to our supporters. And you've all been re-engaged at the end of the session. Brilliant.